Hello, everybody out there on YouTube. Once again, it's Reverend, and I am here to talk to you about E3 2016 and the Sony conference. I just put up my Microsoft conference video just a little while ago. This one is going to concentrate on Sony and my thoughts and reflections on it. Now, this is actually going to be kind of simple. Either that or I'm just going to end up gushing all over the place like a fanboy. Reason being is that Sony's E3 2016 conference can pretty much be summed up in three words: games, games, and more games. Okay, that's just one word. I guess if you want to throw a second word in there, VR. Yeah, and that's pretty much how it was set up. Now, the general presentation of it wasn't as verbose. There wasn't a lot of people talking on stage, or as many people coming up on stage to either introduce video clips of games that they're planning to put out, or annoyingly act like they're interested or actually playing the game that's being demoed out. But what they did was that they had a few people come up, a few key speakers. It wasn't very long at all. They came up and then they showed off game footage. Basically, I guess all I have to talk about for them is games. It turns out that, okay, let's get the hardware stuff out of the way. The Neo was not ready to show up at E3, so they didn't mention anything about that. They did address PlayStation VR. They gave it a solid release date, October 13th, 2016, and it is going to be set at manufacturer's suggested retail price of $399, which a lot of people already knew. In this age of the internet, a lot of this stuff got released out, and a lot of people already knew what to expect hardware-wise from Sony. If you look back any of the videos that I have that I put out myself or with my buddies, the other middle-aged guys, pretty much we cover a lot of this stuff, and Sony went out of their way and they confirmed quite a few rumors. But without further ado, let's go into the games. And there was a lot of them. In fact, there was quite a few games that they showed off in their little montage that they really didn't give too much time on stage, but for what they did give time to, impressive stuff, really impressive stuff. And they started out with a bang. God of War. No subtitle, just God of War. Or as the internet has lovingly referred to it as, Dad of War. New Kratos, new appearance, but you can tell it's him. Unlike the rumors that were set out before, it's not some alternate character. This is Kratos. He's grown out this huge burly beard. He's not running around with the blades of chaos. He's got an axe that's magical that he could throw, and it will return to him just like Thor's hammer. And it looks like he's got a character that's tagging along with him. We don't know if it's his son, but he refers to him as boy, and first thing he says to him is something along the lines of, "Take your mother's knife. She's taught you how to hunt." Now, I don't know how the story is going to play out, if this is Kratos washed up on the shores of in Viking country, or if something else happened. I really liked our particular take on the possibility that Kratos showing up in Norse mythology, him being whisked away to Valhalla, because obviously he's a great enough warrior to kill the Greek Parthenon. He's probably going to qualify for that particular he's probably going to qualify as one of the warriors you want on your side when Ragnarok comes around. But as it was, they changed a few things. They played around with the perspective of the character. It's a little bit closer over the shoulder, third person. Mechanics, it didn't It didn't make itself obvious whether or not you were actually controlling the boy that he was following around in their particular demo, but they did make it obvious that it was actual gameplay that was being shown. Impressive as fuck. Really impressive. I've got to go back and finish God of War 3 and play through Ascension before I get to this. And the way that it's looking, I'm going to have to get to this. Then they followed up with Horizon Zero Dawn from Guerrilla Games, which looked great. I believe that was actually also announced out last year E3, but they didn't have too much footage or anything like that. Female character, mechanized animals in what looks like a post-apocalyptic world. I'm all for it. The way that it looked, grand open environments and everything else. There's a lot of post-apocalyptic games where the robots take over, and this is a different take on that. I have no problem with it. The reason being is that your other option for a post-apocalyptic game, if everything's not fallen out and there's mutants all over the place, is zombies. Which we had a game shown off called Days Gone. Another one that was really, really interesting. That one is set to come out, and it's being put together by Ben Studios. They did 2 sections for Days Gone. The first one, I thought, to be honest, that it was The Last of Us 2. It kind of had that vibe of somebody going ahead and trying to take care of loved ones as somebody was lost along the way. And I really didn't get an idea of what that meant exactly until they showed the ending gameplay demonstration of the main character chasing down a guy and then trying to escape from hordes of zombies. And we're not talking about slow groaning shamblers. We're talking about fast, drooling, running, athletic zombies like out of 28 Days Later or World War Z. Just hundreds and hundreds of them trying to get this guy. And it left off on a spot where it was like, oh damn, yeah, if this guy dies, I don't know what else he can do, because he made the last few minutes up to the top of that water tower, and all that happens is that they pan out, and all you see is hundreds upon thousands of zombies just converging on that spot, because they all heard the gunfire and the screams, and they're coming for dinner. That looked really interesting. That one was followed up by Detroit Become Human by Quantic Dream. These are the same folks who did, I believe, I know that they did 2 other games. I just can't recall off the top of my head. This one looks really, really interesting. It's another one that I believe they announced at a previous E3 or at a previous game show. But I like the emphasis on, okay, there are multiple choices. A lot of people are equating this to a digital choose your own adventure. When I think role-playing, actual role-playing, making multiple decisions, having multiple outcomes, and all of them influencing your actual gameplay experience, that's actually a little bit closer to what I think should be there. There's obviously a lot of prescribed and predefined endings for situations and everything, but it showed that there was a lot of freedom, to the point where you have to sit there and micromanage your decisions in order to get one particular favorable ending over, multiple other endings, some not so favorable and some of them just straight out bad. Really interesting one to go ahead and look at. Then they continued on to show off The Last Guardian. Um, I'm going to tell you right now that I've had The Last Guardian pre-ordered and fully paid for on Amazon since I think 2010 or 2011. Yeah, at least the last 4 years. I'm glad that they actually gave it a concrete date for October 25th, 2016. And to be honest, the presentation and some of the graphical assets that they had, it looks like a later generation PS3 game to me. Granted, I'm going to be really honest in saying that the jump in fidelity between late late generation PS3 games and early generation PS4 games isn't that big to me. I know that there are a lot of games out there that probably will prove me wrong, and that's you'll have to forgive me on that. I don't own a PS4 yet, but part of the reason that I don't own a PS4 yet is because I'm just waiting for there to be enough games out there to justify my purchase of it. In which case, after this E3 conference, really went out of its way and gave me a lot of compelling reasons. Now, the other things that were announced or shown off in the particular conference, media conference, was they had to. It was obligatory. They had to address VR and what VR games are going to be out there. According to Sony, there's going to be 50 PS4 VR compatible games out on the market by this holiday season, of which they showed Batman Arkham VR, which looks interesting, but they didn't show anything other than the fact that it was a rendering of the cowl with Mark Hamill doing the voiceovers, and showed the logo Batman Arkham VR by Rocksteady. Now, if they can go ahead and give me an immersive experience that makes the detective and clue gathering sections of the Arkham games interesting and compelling to go ahead and interact with, I'm all for that. Out of all of the Arkham games that were put out there, Arkham Origins, which was done by Warner Brothers, I believe Warner Brothers, their Warner Brothers Canada studio, it it did its best to be like Arkham City, to be like the Rocksteady Arkham games. It tweaked with a few things here and there, nothing great. But and the thing about it was that when it was rushed out the door, it was kind of buggy when it left out. But when it worked great. When it had its great, set pieces and experience, moments, they were great. One of the things that I really liked about Arkham Origins over the other Arkham games, though, is that when you went into detective mode and you actually recreated crime scenes and Batman was sitting down being a detective, that was great. They unfortunately, Rocksteady, even in Arkham Knight, they weren't able to sit there and replicate that. And I think that's one of the few things that's been kind of missing from Batman games and movies is a lot of the detective work that Batman is able to do. And as great as the Arkham games are, Rocksteady pretty much distilled that down to, oh, Batman hits a setting on his visor and he's able to see clues that you wouldn't see otherwise. Then we're just going to lay it out like an Easter egg hunt. Which, it's better than a lot of games out there that don't even broach the subject or don't even broach that part of his mythology. But, yeah, admittedly, that's one thing that the Warner Brothers Canadian studios were able to do that Rocksteady did not do as well as they could have. So I'm obviously interested in Arkham VR. They also had Resident Evil 7 for the PS4. According to them, the whole experience can be played via VR. It's not required to play, but it can be played through VR. The demo, which is out now, really, really interesting, very, very creepy. And if you're thinking about whether or not you should go ahead and download the demo, it has been stated that it's a prologue chapter that will not be included in the actual release game. So the demo itself is its own separate experience, its own separate chapter, setting up Resident Evil 7. They also had, from on the VR front, I believe they had Star Wars Battlefront, X-Wing mission, the VR X-Wing mission, which okay. I mean, if you're into that, that should. It's one of those things where that you think about. It's like, yeah, it makes sense. VR for that particular type of gameplay makes sense. And then they showed off VR capabilities for Final Fantasy 15. Funny thing is that Microsoft had Final Fantasy 15 gameplay footage, which looked great. But then again, it's Final Fantasy. It's Square Enix. They always put their AAA producers and their best artists and developers, their best development muscle into their Final Fantasy titles, especially the main numbered series. And of course it was going to look good. If it didn't look good, I would be struck odd to find something to say about that. I would think it'd be a joke or something, but it looked great. Final Fantasy 15 on the PS4. Funny thing was that when they did their conference, they showed off Final Fantasy 15, their gameplay footage. They showed that they had VR capabilities. Couldn't share that one with Microsoft, could you, Sony? Just had to go ahead and one-up them like that. So, one of those things that, hey, it looks interesting. I'm just honestly not all that excited about Final Fantasy 15. I would like to go ahead and actually play it a little bit to go ahead and make my own judgment, because otherwise it looks like a weird amalgamation of Monster Hunter and Devil May Cry. Actually, it looks kind of like, even worse, I can probably draw parallels to the Parasite Eve third birthday on PSP, and that was not a good game. So it's going to have great production values and great sound and everything else, but I'm not holding my breath for that. With that, Sony, they gave me a lot of reasons to go ahead and look into owning a PS4. I'm not a big proponent of VR. If you watched any of the previous videos that we put out, I've said this very openly. But I like the option, and if it actually offers a differing experience that I can't get anyplace else and it's affordable, I may be willing to go ahead and entertain the idea of picking one up and trying it out. At this moment in time, a lot of the stuff that's out there, it's like, okay, well, it's kind of like the 3D movie thing to me. It's, when it works great, it's phenomenal, but otherwise, if you try to sit there and shoehorn it in to productions that aren't built around it, you get mixed results. And I could care less as long as you give me good games. And Sony, they showed off their upcoming games that they wanted to show off, and they looked phenomenal. Majority of them looked phenomenal. And I think that's pretty much it. I'll forgo a number rating or grading or anything like that, because I don't give a fuck about who won E3. I just want to see what games came out, really. And I want to see how I'm going to be playing them. Now, if they put out a peripheral that required me to go ahead and play tiddlywinks with my toes to play a game that I'm interested in, no. But that wasn't the case with Sony's, which is a good thing. All right, with that, thank you, YouTube, for spending like the last 20 minutes with me. Like I say at the end of every video that I put out, whether it be by myself or with the middle-aged guys, If you're so kind, hit that like button, hit subscribe. If there's anything that I missed or anything that you would have questions on, or you think that I'm completely off my rocker for saying in this video, go ahead and leave me a comment. Comments promote discussion, all right? And the greatest thing about discussion, like I always say, it doesn't matter if you agree or disagree with me. If for a moment, anytime during the conversation, I make you stop and think about what I'm saying just a little bit, then I've accomplished more than you could ever imagine. Thank you for your YouTube, for giving me your time. I'll see you later. I'm the Reverend. Good night.